In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about busting myths of container gardening. Hi, I'm Robin. Welcome to Robin's Container Garden. People have been gardening in containers for millennia, and there are some misconceptions about containers that I thought that I would talk to you about today. And the first one is people think that if you garden in containers, you have a limited variety of plants that you can put in containers and grow. And although that is true to a point, it's not gospel. You can grow plants in containers next to each other when they actually wouldn't grow next to each other if you had them in the ground. For instance, I had a blueberry bush in a container right next to a container of carrots and peppers, and they wouldn't have been able to grow next to each other if I had them in the ground, because your blueberry bush needs ericaceous soil where the carrots and peppers prefer a more alkaline soil. So you can grow just about anything you want to in a container. I've grown leeks and lettuces and potatoes and tomatoes and peppers and raspberries. Just about everything you can think of in a regular garden can go into a container. So really the sky's the limit, and the best thing to do when you're wondering about these things is to experiment. Plant it in a container and see how it does for a season, and if it doesn't do well, then you put it in the ground. Another misconception is complex maintenance. Now, any time that you grow a plant in soil, anywhere, and sometimes even in the house, you're going to get things in that container that you don't want. We normally call them weeds. Even when I have weeds in my containers, they're not as prolific as they are in the ground. I have some beds up front. You guys know that I grow wildflowers, and I've grown my onions in the beds. And weeding those beds is a never-ending thing. It's like painting the fourth rail bridge. But I found that the plants that I put in containers have fewer weeds, and they're a lot easier to get to. I have bad knees. You guys know I've talked about it a lot. So it's really hard for me to get down on my hands and knees to pull weeds out of the ground. And bending over is, for a long time, is hard on the back, especially the more birthdays I end up with. But I find that gardening in containers, I can actually easily reach the weeds that are in those containers. And if I'm really working on something to prune it and to weed it and to really work with it, I can get a bench and I can sit down, and I'm not on the ground and I'm not having to be on my knees. I can just sit down and work on it. So I don't believe that gardening in containers is complex maintenance at all. I think it actually is easier than growing things in the ground. Another misconception about container gardening is that there are smaller yields. Now, I've gardened in the ground and I've gardened in containers, and I have found that there's really not that much in it. Last year, I harvested 23.5 kilos. I'll put the pounds down here. 23.5 kilos of food out of my garden last year. And even with the lower number of tomatoes that I got this year because of the weather and the rain and cooler temperatures that we had, I still have already broken the back of that. I haven't completely harvested all of my summer crops. My leeks are still in the container around the north side of the house. And when I have that one done, I'll do the comparison video. But I'm already over the amount of harvest that I had for last year. And I didn't grow tons of different really heavy things this year, but the things that I did grow and the things that did end up successful were very successful. So I don't really think that there's that much difference. Obviously, if you have a huge allotment, you're going to have a lot more food that you're harvesting, and with that comes a lot more work. So I think for the amount of work compared to the amount of harvest, it's actually better. Another myth for container gardening is that it's an expensive setup. Now, I have bought all of these fabric containers myself. I got most of them on sale, so I did save money there. But one thing that I did do was scour my Facebook local pages for free containers, because people change their looks. They will decide that they're not gardening anymore, they're moving to a smaller location or a different location. For whatever reason, they give away containers, and I've got loads of them that were given to me. And a lot of them are around the front, and I'll show you those in a minute. But you really don't have, you could actually set up a whole container garden without any expense except for your compost. And if you've got room to have a compost bin like we do, you can cut down on that amount of money that you're spending on compost. But you would be buying compost for a raised garden bed or gardening in your ground as well, because not all gardens, not all soils are set up for growing food. So you could do the container part of it, you could do for free if you wanted to. You can also repurpose things that are in your house that you no longer use, or say there's a bowl that you don't like the look of anymore. If it's a plastic bowl, you can put holes in it and put it out. If you have an old watering can that maybe sprung a leak, well, give it a few more leaks and plant some stuff in there. There are so many different ways that you can think about different things that you can repurpose, that you could grow outside. So I don't think that's a good one either, because you can do it for as much or as little as you want to spend. Number 5. A lot of people think that if you have a container garden that it lacks aesthetics. So you have your nice little rows in your ground, and you've got different things that you've planted, and it looks very nice and neat. Granted, my containers around the west side of my house are not the prettiest thing to look at, but they're functional. But the ones that I decide to put around here in the front, the place that people see when they come up to the front of the house, they're the ones that are colorful in different shapes. I've got my spring bulbs planted in these two and in this one here, and they'll stay there for the winter, and they'll grow when they grow, and then the front will look a little bit more like this, and it's full of fragrance and full of color, and that's what you want. If you're growing things in the ground, you can only get up as far as the ground goes to your front door. And as you can see, I don't have ground around the front door. It's pebbles and then it's steps. So I'm actually getting the garden closer to the front door than I could if I was growing just in the ground. So, sorry, I think that myth's busted too. So, I think that a lot of people that haven't grown in containers before have misconceptions or preconceptions about whether or not growing in containers is for them. And it may not be for everybody, but it works for me, and it works for a lot of you because you've told me it has. While I'm here, I wanted to say a huge thank you to Donna, who bought me a cup of tea with the last video that I put out a few weeks ago. And I wanted to say thank you very much. And if you want to help support the channel and buy me a cup of tea, all you have to do is go to this link down here, put it in the description below, and you'll be able to buy me a cup of tea, and I would really appreciate it. So now it's time for the big question. What's your favorite thing that you've grown in a container? Have you actually tried growing things in a container that didn't work, or things that you didn't think were going to grow in a container that actually did work? Tell them down below in the comments, because I really want to know. This is the season when we're putting our gardens to bed. So if you have a list of jobs that you need to do for your garden for the autumn, watch these two videos here and they'll help give you some ideas. They were videos that my fellow YouTube gardeners helped me make last year, and I thought you'd like to have a look at those. And remember, you don't have to grow all the things in containers or in the ground. Just grow something. Take care. Bye, y'all.